Hey crafters, DM Scotty here and welcome to the DM's Craft. Today I've got an interesting little project for you. Well, I guess I say that for every video, but they're all interesting to me and hopefully to you or you wouldn't be watching. But anyways, I want to do a tendril and had a good friend of mine ask me how to do this, Dungeon Master Johnny, a great no bullshit DM, fantastic guy. So I'm doing a little shout out to him. I wanted to show him how to do this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do grasping tendril. But I also want to do something else with this. You know how they have those black tentacles that mages can summon? I also want to do that project too. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this technique and make two different things with it. So kind of neat. So let's go to the table and we'll start crafting that right now. To start the tendrils, here's what I need. I got some paper towels. I'm going to use these instead of toilet paper, just my white glue, and I got some water here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a square of the paper towel, and what I'll do is I'm going to get it all wet. Now I'm not putting any glue in this water. I'm just using straight up water. Okay, I'll get most of the water out. And I've kind of squished it into a ball so I can squish all the water out. Now what I'll do is I'll open that up. Okay, so there I have a wet sheet. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, let me move the water out of the way here. I'm going to get a corner and I'm going to kind of pinch it. And then I'm going to twist. So I've got a very small end there, and then I'll just keep twisting. And you see how naturally that's kind of grabbing the paper towel, and it's making it tapered at the end and wider at the bottom. Okay. So now I think I've got that as tall as I want. You can keep going and make a really tall one, and it will keep increasing the size of the base, but I think I like that height. So what I'm going to do, I'll just grab my scissors. I have a pair of scissors, and I'm going to cut it. Okay, so there we go. Now the problem with this is not going to stay this way. You know, when it dries out, it'll go back to being a piece of paper. So you know the technique I use for this. It's very similar to the toilet paper technique. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to grab just something I can put this on because I'm going to get a little glue on it. And I have this tape roll just so I can kind of lean it up, and you'll see what I'm going to do. So I can lean it up and shape it. So what I will do with this is I'll just grab my white glue and I'll squirt it on there. I'm just going to do a strip. And I'll do strips on each side. And then I'm just going to kind of saturate that with the white glue. Now be careful because the bottom can unravel fairly easily, so you don't want that to happen. So make sure you got everything saturated there. So now what I can do, that's fairly boring, just a straight up piece like that. So what I can do is I can bend it up a bit. So I'm going to kind of twist it. And just play with it till you get how you want. And then I'm going to leave it like that. So I'm using the tape roll to kind of give it a twist, and I can lean it over the tape roll to get like a shape that I want. So now, for however many of these you want to make, just repeat this process. And with this, with the paper towel, you can actually make, if you make them not too long, like about with the length I've made, you can get 4 out of this one paper towel. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these, and then we'll come back for the next part. I have let my various shapes dry for a bit, And what I'm going to do is put some more glue. So I'll grab one of my shapes, and you can see it's kind of staying in its form. But I want to add some more glue. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab my white glue and put a dab on the end there. And I'm also going to run another bead on it. And then I'm going to use, I have this disposable brush, but you can use any brush as long as you wash it off, you can reuse it. So I'm just going to kind of spread it out on there. That'll kind of help me not destroy the shape I've set up. And you can even like reapply it to the, and so we'll just do the rest of these. And you want to do this a couple times. I'd recommend doing it a couple times. I've done it on the one side, I'll do it on the other side. So do this a couple times and then we'll move on to the next step. I have let these dry overnight, and you might find that they kind of stick to but just pull them off the paper. You could use something I use this pad, you could use something that's non-sticky, it would probably work better. But hey, this works too. Now, you can see I've got tons of different shapes. Like with this one, with this kind of tendril here, I pushed it against the roll, the weight, so it would stay that way. And then once you get the shape, you don't have to worry about it. It'll, when you put the extra glue on it, it'll stay. This is interesting too. I also did one in the center, and I pushed it against the walls of so I was able to get a cool shape. So just, yeah, work on shapes. I have this one draping over. This one has like a little curl on the top. So just play with that a lot. So now we got all these dry, and they're pretty sturdy, believe it or not. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I want to attach them to bases. And a great way to get a base, a super cheap base, is to get washers. And I got this washer box, I think I've talked about it before, for like less than $8. This is 100 washers. Try to get 100 bases for less than $8. Also, they're a little heavy, so it gives it weight. Now these are steel, so if you use any kind of magnetic terrain or there's Aaliyah tiles or things or anything, you can stick them to these, which is great. So you could use these for figures and everything. So now I have this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the tendrils to this. Now you can see that it has a hole in it. Well, it's a washer. It has a hole. Now I try to get the ones with the smallest hole in the center, but there's going to be some glue go through. So if you're doing these, put something underneath so you can either pull it off or it won't stick to it. So I'm just going to use the same pad of paper. Now, for this part of the project, I want to do a vine, like a grasping vine, and I think I want to just use one vine on this piece. So what I'll do is I'll just grab my hot glue, and I'm using the small one. If you're going to do this kinds of crafts, I'd really recommend getting a larger and small one. The large one is great for tiles and everything, and the smaller one is much better for this kind of detail work. So what I'm going to do is put it on here, and you can see it almost fits that hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a big glop of glue on there, and I will attach this. And you can stand it up how you want it if it's not exactly flat. Alright, so there we go. So we'll let that dry for a second, and then we'll move on to the next phase. Alright, for this part, I'm going to take my piece that's already on the base, and this is kind of, the base is kind of nice because then I can, it gives me something to hold on to while I do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting some glue on this tendril. This will kind of give it some more texture, and you can still see a little bit of the spiraling from the twisting. If you want to kind of hide that, you can put a little bit of glue texture on here. and it'll reinforce it, and as well as give it a nice texture. So we'll go ahead and finish this up. I finished applying the glue to the tendril, and you can see it's pretty cool looking. Now, when you're doing something like this, be really careful that you don't rush it. I'm actually just showing you one, but I would usually do more than one. So when you're doing this, put the tendril on, let that dry for a minute, or harden up, I should say, with the glue gun. And then the same with the tendril. Let this glue harden up, because if you start to try to get grabbing it while it's partially dry or partially hot or warm, it'll start pulling off. So you don't want to take your time with this kind of stuff. When you're doing dungeons, you can just put it right on there and then just stick the stuff and not worry about it. When you're going to grab it like this, make sure you let it dry off for a few, or harden for a few minutes before you play with it. So now I've got that. That's really nice. Now what I want to do is I want to add a little bit of detail to the base. So I'm going to get my glue gun and I'm going to kind of pull out. And you got to be careful with this kind of technique, because if you put too much, it will make it look like it's just a blob. So generally what I do with this kind of stuff is I'll put a little bit of texture on it. And if I'm not really satisfied with it the first time, you can always add another layer. If it got a little too blobby for you, you can always add another layer. So there we go. Now I know it's cleary, but you can kind of get an idea of some texture. So it really looks like a plant that's bursting out from the ground, and that just kind of adds some neat detail to that. And that actually came out pretty good. I don't think I'll have to do a second part on that. But now I want to show, this is going to be a vine, and I want to show one last thing you can do to this to kind of give it like a planty look. So let's go ahead and go to that. So what you're seeing now is just a plain white sheet of paper, okay? Nothing special about it, just a printer piece of paper. Now I'm going to use my small glue gun, and I'm going to do lines on the paper. Try to make them pretty thin. If you can taper them off, that's great. So we'll do about 4 or 5 of these. All right, there we go. So let's let those dry up for a sec, or harden up, and then we'll go to the next phase of this. All right, now so I've got my lines that are all drawn. Make sure you let those dry. And I'm just going to take a pencil and kind of draw a leaf shape on the end of those. All right, you're kind of like making a spear, okay? So now, just take my scissors and I'll cut along. Leave a little bit of the stem on there. And so, here, I'll get one. Okay. So now, I'm just gonna cut along the stem and then cut out the leaf. I'm actually cutting the pencil mark off. So here's what we look like. So we have that shape. Now what I can do is I can just cut this stem to length, like whatever length I want it to be. And I can just glue it to this vine. So I'll pick a spot and I'll put it there. And I'm doing the leaf part or the glue part face up, so that gives it kind of a dimension. So now we'll just add the rest of those to that, and then we can paint it up and it's ready for our table. So here I wanted to give you a final look at the finished tendril. So I'm going to turn that around so you can see how good that really looks. Now I'll paint it black. I'll base paint it black, and then we'll finish it up with a paint job. For the painting section of this vid, since I've got so much to cover, I'm just going to I'm not going to divide each section of the painting. I'm just going to go through the whole painting process in a series of clips. So first part is we have our tendril, our vine tendril, and it is all painted flat black. So I'm going to use my burnt umber, and I'm going to wet that down with some water. And then I'm just going to cover the entire vine, including the base, with the burnt umber. Now this is, the reason for this is my base coat, and then we build up from that. So here's our vine tendril, and it is dried. The brown is dried. I'm going to use a forest moss. This is kind of a thinnish green. I'm going to put on over the whole thing. And it's not real intense. You'll see a lot of the brown through it. But it gives like a nice variation of shade. And it doesn't make it look too green. Alright, there we go. Have our green on there. My next green is going to be a leaf green, and it's a little brighter than the forest moss. So I'll grab that leafy green and then just start painting on the leaves there. Make sure you get both sides. And it's not a huge difference, but it is a brighter green. All right. So I'll give you a look at that. Okay, so now our vine is finished. Here's our finished vine model, and I have a adventurer next to it for scale, so it looks really great. Looks like it'd really grab a poor adventurer. You can use these for druid summons. They can summon these. You can use these for magical vines that will grasp the players, that kind of thing. So a lot of possibilities with this. Now that I've shown this one, I'm going to do a part 2 of this video, and I'm going to show how to do the black tentacles that I was talking about with the same technique, just a slight variation. So watch out for part 2 of this vid, and I'll show you how to do that. Hey crafters, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the DM's Craft. Make sure to subscribe, and I have tons of other videos, as you can see. I am the originator of the 2.5D method of crafting tiles. I also do dirt cheap terrain for the table. If all this intrigues you, make sure you check out all the videos below. Also, join my forum. We have lots of great crafters on there who give advice. I have a link above and below. And last but not least, remember, go forth and craft!